Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. I have Piscal or Anthony with us today, and he has a lot of great information. We were talking before the show, a lot of good stuff to talk about. So, as always, welcome, Anthony.
Hey, Christian. Thanks for having me again. I think
Yes,
we're on our fourth or fifth talk.
yeah, that's right. We did our first one where you did an update, and we got a lot of positive feedback. And then we discovered that there's a real desire out there to hear updates of what's happening
Mhm.
in the ETC community. So we just decided to honor our listeners' requests, and so here we are. Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on and doing your research, being faithful with that. So yeah, thank you always. And so yeah, let's jump right into it. So what's going on with ETC that we need to know about?
Okay, so a couple exciting things. First, the ETC Cooperative, we got a donation of $250,000. So that's going to be great. Going to be able to put that towards more marketing, towards more community outreach type of programs, and maybe towards some other projects. But I'm just excitedly trying to figure out what to do with this money, basically.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. But yeah, there's going to be some good things coming out of that. And then, sort of related to that, the same group, Digital Finance Group, they're based out of Shanghai, China. They also launched ETC Labs,
Mm-hmm.
and that is an ETC incubator for projects. So they've launched with about, I think, $50 million in funding. And for those that don't know, an incubator is basically a way to bootstrap projects. So what they'll do is they'll provide some funding to different projects that want to run on the Ethereum Classic network. They'll provide them with mentorship. They'll give them all the industry connections they need because they're already very well connected, and they'll also provide some office space, I think, in either San Francisco or Singapore.
All right. Wow.
And I think this is going to be really, really great for Ethereum Classic. I was actually kind of bewildered because at first it seemed as if people didn't value this that highly, but this is really what's going to help make Ethereum Classic even bigger than it already is by getting more developers involved, not so much on the core network because we already have plenty of developers there, but on some of the more third-party things, some more of the interaction with the blockchain.
Yeah, I think that's great because it's going to lead to a lot more applications being developed on ETC, and that's definitely a big vote of confidence. What did you say it was 50 million?
Yeah, it was 50 million in total funding for their operations.
I can't
That's
even imagine somebody having 50 million to just donate to ETC. Well, I assume they're going to presumably make some. Hopefully, they're hoping to make money off it. They're not just giving it away. But still, wow, that's pretty impressive. We'll look forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should be giving away $50 million out of the goodness of their heart unless it's something very charitable and very important. I love blockchain, but I don't believe we're a charity. And yeah, they're going to be essentially giving 50 to 150,000 in initial funding for, I think, a 9% or so stake in whatever projects they fund.
Okay.
So yeah, they'll get something out of it too, and I think it's going to be a really good relationship in general.
Okay, I saw a startup kind of hangout or incubator, I guess you'd call it, in Austin, Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty impressive. There was several floors, and there was all these, ambitious people on whiteboards and working on bean bags, and there was just a lot of activity. It looked like a fun place to work at. So presumably this one in San Francisco and the others will be as interesting as that one was.
Yeah, hopefully, and hopefully they're super ambitious. I love ambition. Actually, kind of similar to that for ambitious projects. There's ETC Dev is actually partnering with some people at OpenStack, so they're working on a couple different things where they're they're basically starting these little trial projects with OpenStack for them using the network. So I think there was one related to identification, and there's going to be more news coming out of ETC Dev, but it's kind of similar to ETC Labs in that respect, in that they're also working on getting more third-party participants in the blockchain.
Okay, so for people that don't know, my understanding is that OpenStack is a standard for cloud computing. So people might be familiar with Amazon Web Services, and their APIs, their application programming interfaces, are their own in-house proprietary system, whereas OpenStack tries to make a portable standard open system that different cloud providers can use, so you could move your infrastructure between cloud providers more easily. That's my understanding of it. Yeah. So then
that's accurate.
And so I could see why they would need help with identification, right? Because if you log into your Linux server, your Linux server, you can get identification information or root password, but that just pertains to that one instance with that cloud service. But presumably they're doing something that would allow you to port your identity more easily between different providers. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but everybody needs help with identity. So yeah, that sounds like a good application.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, I'm just really excited to see what comes out of that. I wish I had more news on it, but most people who work on Ethereum Classic don't like to really announce things until we have very solid plans.
Okay.
No, we don't want to be the
vaporware, as they call it.
We don't want to be the Trons of blockchain.
Oh wait, I missed that. What's this Tron?
I don't.
Well, you got to fill us. Give me the context or the background for that.
Tron is a blockchain that just copies everybody else's code, and everything else does find replace to replace names and stuff, and then hypes up their chain.
I see.
Yeah, but enough throwing shade. Let's move on to more ETC stuff.
Okay.
So we're also launching EthereumClassic.org. We were actually supposed to launch today. There was just a couple little tweaks and final polish that I want to make to the website, so we're going to actually launch it tomorrow. If you are familiar with Ethereum Classic, you know that our website is very out of date and very old. A lot of that is because for a long time, we were just a set of really true believers who didn't quite have much funding. And now we have a lot more funding, so you're going to see, in addition to EthereumClassic.org get its redesign, you're going to see a lot more of the things that you would expect from a larger blockchain like Ethereum out of us. Okay. And I think that's going to be great because, we're still sticking to our principles, still sticking to our guns, and we've found a way to do it and get funding in order to do it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Now, this is just a little minor pet peeve, but it might even still be this way, but the EthereumClassic.org website didn't use SSL because it was right. They were using GitHub, but so the link between the domain and GitHub, they didn't support SSL, and so I had a note to keep looking into that and help trying to do something about that. But presumably they're going to fix this problem. We'll soon find out.
Yeah, we're gonna fix it. You can't do SSL and a custom domain name on GitHub. It just doesn't work.
So you know what I'm talking about then.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I think
SSL.
Okay, are they going to use welcome to 1995? No, are they going to use a GitHub or?
No, we're going to just host it ourselves.
Okay.
On WordPress, basically.
Okay. All right. Fine. All right. So what else is going on?
All right. So earlier this month, I went to EdCon. And that was a really great experience. Met quite a lot of people there. Had quite a few follow-ups afterwards. Got to really talk to quite a few different people, both regular users and developers, and more people at the top of the Ethereum Foundation food chain, I guess I'd call it. Okay. And it was just really interesting to meet all of them and to find people's opinions, because there were a lot of people too where I would talk to them and they would say, "Oh, Ethereum Classic, it's still around," because they didn't. A lot of people just didn't realize, and
Hmm.
again, I think that goes back to funding. The reason people didn't realize is we did not have the money to launch too many, conferences. We didn't have the money to do the advertising we need to, and we didn't have the money to basically grow our community at that time.
Hmm.
And so when I talk to them, they'd say, "Oh, wow, I'm really glad it's still around." And then I would tell them, we actually do have a lot of good projects. We've been focusing all the funding we do have essentially on building the software, which I think is great. I think that's the first place you should
Right.
be
Yeah. Yes.
focusing.
Absolutely.
And so when I got to talking to them, what I found was that a lot of people actually agree with Ethereum Classic's idea of staying immutable. I mean, it's not, I shouldn't even say it's Ethereum Classic's idea. It's a blockchain idea. It's been around since Bitcoin started,
Mhm.
where you don't, change transactions. And I found a lot of people actually agreed with me. The majority actually agreed, but their issue was that they're developers and they had bills to pay and they had to put food on the table. So they felt that a better choice would be to go with Ethereum, because they had the funding, and that if you needed some seed funding, you can readily find it. And
Right.
so uh, I wish I wish ETC Labs had launched slightly sooner so that I could mention ETC Labs then. But
Right.
yeah, now we don't. Now we're hopefully not going to have to face that issue where if a developer really wants to work on ETC, they can.
Yeah, no, for the people that don't know, you wrote a great medium.com article about your EdCon experiences. And I remember that, and about how you said that the majority of, of people that you encountered supported our stance on immutability.
Mhm.
And it was like, yeah, so that for other reasons, they choose to use Ethereum, like you said, to pay the bills. Now, I do have an interesting story about that. Tell me if this encourages people or if this is relevant. But I remember I was at an open source conference in 2002, I believe it was,
Mhm.
and I had discovered Python, and anyways, and so I was enamored with it, and I went to a Java talk and I raised my hand, or I somehow I got in a conversation with these hardcore Java developers. They were involved with a platform called JBoss, and I said, "Well, what about Python? What about?" Somehow I just wanted to get their opinion on that, and I threw something out there, and they said something similar to what you just did. It was like, "Well, Python sounds awesome because of this, this, and this, but we have to pay the bills, and the whole world uses Java."
Mhm.
So that's, so whether you like it or not, that reason is powerful enough to justify Java, and they weren't going to consider Python. Well, now fast forward, what is it now, like 16 years later? Now from the news, it looks like Python is, a hugely popular language, more so than Perl and these other languages that were dominating back then. And so now I could see today the same thing would happen today if somebody said, "Well, what about Clojure or some other less popular language?" People would say, "Well, sorry, Python makes more money." So,
Mhm.
anyways, things change. What is just because something is paying the bills now doesn't mean it'll always pay the bills. So, in a few years, just wait and see. And ETC might be what is paying a lot of people's bills.
Oh
So,
yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Hopefully, I would love to see ETC at the forefront. Even more importantly, I just want to see immutability stay a core component of every blockchain out there.
right, right.
But yeah, if ETC can be the one, then I would be very, very happy, and I really hope it is. Um, but
Yes.
anyway, so at EdCon 2, though, we had some interesting conversations, and we're going to work on a project called Peace Relay. And that essentially is going to be one of many ways too that are coming out, because different people are working on similar types of projects, where if you want to like take your Ethereum and store it on the Ethereum Classic blockchain or vice versa, you should be able to do that.
Okay.
And you should be able to expand to more freely move your coins elsewhere.
Okay.
Essentially. So we're going to be setting up Peace Relay in order to do that. I think it's also a great way to approach, some ideas of governance. I don't really agree with governance itself so much, not at least not in the highly authoritative or structured way that it's being explored all the time, but I do think that sometimes forks and that type of thing are completely unavoidable because people have different incentives. So, for example, on Ethereum, they've unfortunately got, a lot of Parity's Ethereum locked up and other people's as well. And I think if they were to fork, or even if Parity were to start their own fork, it would be a great way to really give people the freedom to move to whichever blockchain they actually agree with and not which one has control of everything.
Oh, you're referring to the multi-sig bug that locked up, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funds that Parity
Yeah.
wishes. Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Gosh, so okay, so if there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, I could see why some people would get the idea to fork to recover those funds. Okay, wow. All right.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely. And anybody can fork at any time too, so it's
I mean that's talk. We're talking that's a lot of money. Definitely, we'll have to see what happens there. But oh, and then so can you kind of elaborate more on this Peace Relay? So like, what would be a use case if I had $1,000 worth of ETH ether to want to store it on ETC? Is it converting it to ETC ether, or can you elaborate?
It's storing it in a way that you can move it to another blockchain and then redeem it later back on the original chain. So, it gets locked up in one contract on, say, Ethereum, then you get an equivalent amount in an Ethereum token that's essentially an IOU guaranteed by the blockchain.
Okay.
And then you can move it around, transact. You don't use it itself, but you can, if you wanted to send it to somebody else at a different address, you could. If you wanted to maybe, hopefully in the future, beyond just value, if you wanted to get some data off of a different blockchain, you should be able to grab it.
Okay.
So that's where I'm hoping to really see it go, but that's probably going to be in a later version, or hopefully I'll be able to,
Oh, so if I understand you correctly, you transfer ETH ether to ETC, and then you could pass around IOUs that represent that ether. Is that what you meant? Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, a representation of the original token, and presumably that will help with interoperability between applications on ETH and ETC. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then I also went to Consensus. It was a good experience, had a lot of meetings, got to make a lot of those exciting announcements I mentioned earlier during it. It was quite a lot of people, almost too many people.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a really, really great time, really just exciting to see for blockchain in general.
Okay.
I mean, there were some things with the venue that weren't so great. I think a lot of that was just due to the overcrowding, but hopefully we'll see next year it be a little less crowded or at a larger venue.
All right. Now, interesting side note, I was reading a little bit about Consensus, and so the powers that be are big fans of decentralization, and I believe they even structure their company in a decentralized manner, or as much as they can. They give a lot of their development teams a lot of autonomy, and so there's even management methods that encourage decentralization. One of Heliocracy, I think one of them is called Heliocracy, anyways, I thought that was curious that they're trying to be a decentralized company as much as possible.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that, but yeah, so we try to do the same thing on ETC. Oh,
Yeah.
and yeah, I gave a small talk at EdCon, and the video is now uploaded. It was a two-part talk. It's only about 10 minutes, and it was about where Ethereum Classic is now, because a lot of people have some misconceptions about where we are and how much we've advanced.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was how we could better work together. And that kind of ties into Peace Relay and some other things, because essentially when you look at both of our networks, the code itself that you can execute on them and the ways you can interact with the chains is incredibly similar. And there's only very small, minor pain points that exist largely because we started maintaining our own networks and not for any real technical reason.
Right.
So it's more just a communication issue. And so, yeah, my talk's about that. You should really watch it if you want to learn more about where ETC is at a high level or how we can better interop in the future.
Right. So I'll put the link on the metadata to the description of this show. And yeah, I thought that was encouraging also, that there seems to be kind of a spirit of reconciliation or working together with the other chain. It's not hostility so much anymore. So that can only lead to good things. Right?
Yeah, we're not enemies. I think a lot of people try and push that, and they have their own reasons to. But I think when you actually understand how all these different things work, you realize that they're all blockchains are still in this together.
Right.
They're still very early stages. You know, we have even on Ethereum, they're the big guys now, along with Bitcoin and Ethereum. I believe at EdCon they mentioned they had a total of 1 million members, and there's 7 billion people in the world.
Right.
You know, at least half of those are probably adults. So it's just silly to think that we're anywhere near where we need to actually be fighting with each other yet.
So you're saying the pie can still grow a lot bigger.
Yeah, and you see that too, where people will try and, if they have a smaller blockchain too, they try and attack Ethereum Classic, and they'll say, "Oh, well, we have all this news coming out and all this fun stuff," and a lot of times they're not going to be able to deliver on what they're promising, and then on top of that, it's just silly. It's you taking down another blockchain, you disparaging another person's efforts doesn't make your efforts more valuable. It really actually makes everything less valuable.
Right.
You've just done damage to the community,
right.
Except for obvious scams like Tron.
Back to Tron.
Anyway, if you've been listening this long, you may be interested in the Ethereum Classic Summit that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be on September 12th and 13th in Seoul, South Korea. And I'm going to have more information for it in the coming weeks. Essentially, right now there's the website etcsummit.org, and you can just go and etcsummit.com, and you can just check it out and sign up. We're still need to put up the actual links for buying tickets. They're going to be very cheap, though. They're going to be basically about $100.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm hoping to see a lot of people there. We're also looking for speakers and sponsors. So if anybody wants to speak or sponsor the event, then feel free to reach out to me at anthony@etccooperative.org, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you.
All right, very good. Mm-hmm. Oh, one other comment about ETH versus ETC and the false idea that there's hostility. So the analogy that I've heard is it's like a football game. You can have different teams competing in a football game, right? But it's not personal. If one mm-hmm. team loses, right, they don't send death threats in the mail to the other team or anything like that. So it's a friendly rivalry, you might say.
Well, sometimes they do, and but yeah, people aren't. It should be more of a friendly rivalry. Originally, there was a lot of toxicity and animosity, and I'm really hoping to get away from that. I don't think
Hmm.
it's productive at all.
Right.
Mhm. And yeah, so running a little low on things to mention, but we are still improving the open source etc block explorer.
Uh-huh.
So you'll be able to, there's just a lot more features, a lot more stability coming to it, so that's great. I have a bunch of pull requests to merge in, so I'm looking forward to doing that hopefully tomorrow. And funny enough, actually, the etc block explorer is used pretty much everywhere. If you go there's a way to search it on Google, but you can go and look and see that there are a lot of different Ethereum based projects that all use our block explorer, and I think that's awesome.
Okay.
Even Rootstock uses our block explorer, though
Uh,
Rootstock, funny enough, uses our block explorer, took out the license file and completely rebranded it.
okay.
So that's a little not so
Ouch.
cool. I don't
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Uh-huh.
So if you're anybody from Rootstock and listening, you should really update that license file. I'm probably going to file a bug report about it soon. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, as somebody that knows a little bit about open source licenses, so the GPL, you have to share all your derivative code. The
Mhm.
BSD type licenses, you you can use the code any way you want, but I think you have to provide attribution. You don't get the copyright.
Yeah, exactly. And we have our Ethereum Classic.org license on it, which is very BSD MIT like.
Uh-huh.
So it's already super permissive. So the idea that you're just going to take that out and not attribute at all is just a little offensive, in all honesty. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
legally nobody probably has the money to do anything about it, but I just think it's ridiculous. Um
Yeah, people think you could do anything you want with the BSD type licenses, but really attribution is really all that they really ask for. You can't, basically it's plagiarism what they're doing. Right. You can't, you can copy things, but you can't plagiarize them. So,
Yeah, it's not a big ask. I really like Bitcoin. I think Rootstock is interesting if you they can move away from the federated model, because right now it is federated
right.
and requires Rootstock servers to coordinate everything.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, we'll see.
Oh,
Anyway,
now, oh wait, one
yeah.
other comment. So as someone that's kind of been making my own ETC block explorer on the side and playing with a parity node, so if anybody uses ETC parity, you might notice that the number of peer connections slowly dwindles after about 1 or 2 weeks, and that's a known problem. There's a lot of discussion, and there's even some evidence that I think their latest version that's going to be coming out shortly is 1.11, that there's there that might fix it, but if it doesn't, just know that people are aware of it, and that'll be solved hopefully shortly.
Yeah. Oh, and related to that too, we are having a hard fork very soon. So no free coins, none of that stuff. Please don't ask. It's just to update, it's just to remove the difficulty bomb so that mining doesn't become impossible.
Mhm.
So if you haven't updated your node yet, please update it. It's going to happen at block 5.9 million. All the major nodes and exchanges are already updated. So yeah, get to updating. Block 5.9 million should occur in a few days, probably around the 24th. So yeah.
Now, and so what happens if people don't update their nodes?
You'll end up on the minority fork and mining a coin that nobody trades or uses.
I see. Okay, so you definitely want to update then. Okay.
Yeah. And so one other fun thing is the Mastering Ethereum book by Andreas Antonopoulos
Mhm.
is now entered its editing stage. And
Okay.
so once it's published, though, it's actually going to have a chapter on Ethereum Classic and our history with Ethereum and the DAO and all that fun stuff. There's also a couple other chapters that have been updated so that they have information on Ethereum Classic. So if you want to know how to deploy your smart contracts on ETC rather than ETH, then you can also go and learn about that.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, really excited to see ETC in that book.
Right.
And yeah.
Good. All right. So as we come to the close of our show, is there anything else that we need to notify the listeners of, or anything else that you want to mention?
We're actually getting somebody from the Ethereum Foundation to attend the ETC summit.
Oh, okay. Do you
So
know who?
we don't know who yet, but it should be somebody, hopefully high up there.
Okay. Okay.
It'll be exciting.
I saw a picture with Igor. He's a ETC dev member, and he was with their buddy with Summerwell. Bob Summerwell, I think is his name. Is a Ethereum Foundation affiliate.
He's not with them anymore, though.
Okay, yeah, but anyways, he was really positive about working together with ETC. So I thought that was interesting. So yeah, we'll see what happens at this summit then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I personally hope it's Vlad. He's he's very smart, and he's also he's tough to argue with, and I think that's great.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. He does a lot of work on their proof of stake, and he's always writing research papers. Yeah, he would be interesting to have. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we'll see who it is. I don't know yet.
Okay.
And yeah, that's basically it. No.
All right. Well, thank you as usual for your updates, and we will talk again in 1 month.
All right, great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, Anthony.
All right, you too.
All right, bye.